Alright, Chapter 34, Using Solidworks Sheet Metal Tools. SolidWorks contains two completely separate methods of working with sheet metal, but they are both regular SolidWorks, use regular SolidWorks parts. One method uses the dedicated sheet metal feature for the start, the other method is built using the feature for the other than generic modeling tools and convert it to sheet metal so that you can flatten it. The reason for the two methods is the generic modeling method came first, and then SolidWorks introduced more powerful dedicated sheet metal feature for the use these skills together separately. Either way, the accurately flattened part at the end. Situation where might want to use one another and another curve for the chapter. Sheet metal tools don't always represent the real world sheet metal manufacturing process 100% accurately because of some of the shape of the result of the bending philosophy is too complex, easily represent the CAD model. Sometimes you still have to have the imagination, particularly with the bonds, bends, and intersecting overlap. In this, you assume that any of the cuts in sheet metal part will be sheared normally to the face of the part, unless otherwise specified. In this chapter, you will learn to use base flange controls, use generic models to make sheet metal parts work with imported geometry, making conical parts. Using base flange feature for each of the base flange method is easy to grasp the concept of the have the many individual control of the tools represented the ever newer method of building sheet metal parts dedicated to sheet metal feature for the can edit many of the features pulling handle for the spin air for the enter for the specific number for the dimension. Maybe best of all of the SolidWorks number the chain with the thickness for the entire part at one. SolidWorks can chain sheet metal base flange method works on straight brake press basis. This means you can play with the straight bends with a constant rate if the software doesn't have to have the well bend to enter, so if it does not allow the bend to cross. SolidWorks doesn't flatten anything. With the material that forms do anything with the straight bend with the exemption of the loft flange, sweep flange, with the edge flange, with the curve edge, you should show the three features sparingly. You should also use the result depending on the flat pattern that you get with these features. You most often design part of the 3D flat one, and the manufacturer SolidWorks also works for when you start with the flattening pan with the add bend lines. Both methods work to design with the 3D method most effective when trying to make sheet metal parts to fit together in the other parts. Understanding sheet metal manufacturing process is very helpful to SolidWorks. The sheet metal tool for design functionality manufacturing part of the SolidWorks helps you with design, allowing the create of the part that cannot be flattened with the butt is easily enough to model a part that cannot be manufactured economically. You find that useful with the reliable expertise of the other designer with the experience of the shop person with the help you learn how to design sheet metal part with the access sheet metal feature with the clicking the tool needed with the sheet metal tab with the command manager tube with the insert sheet metal from the menu selecting the appropriate tool. Then it shows a bending base flange tab feature of the sheet metal part with the base flange for additional letting SolidWorks know that it must be dedicated to sheet metal part base flange tools have up to three functions. By drawing open the contour of the first feature of the base flange feature for the tools, create the thin feature for the extrusion and include the rounded corners of the bends. By drawing closed contour feature first feature of the bend base flange feature tool creates a flat pattern sheet that is shaped like a sketch so you can start when the base flange tool is used at any time the other than the first feature is functional as a tab. 34.1 show the three function of the base flange feature. Three function base flange tab features. Notice the sketch on the part showing the 34.1 has all sharp corners. They bend radius automatically added to each of the corner software automatically until the bend direction combined with it. Make sure the inside of the radius is always the same regardless of the bend direction. Bends are shown with the base pen with the feature manager chain with the individual bend with the radio with the default setting with the editing the base pen feature, as well as assign custom bend allowance of the per pen basis. You cannot change the bend angle with the particular bends because of the angle of the control through a sketch. However, the other types of the bends with the stuff of the scrape, the edge flame, that can also be bend angle with the feature of the property manager. If you need to reorder all the bends from the list that you can access with the right with the mouse menu, select with reorder bends on the flat pattern of the dialog box shown with the 34.2. Reorder bends. The base bend feature for the spread with the only effect with the prevent with the associated bend flattening of the flat pattern feature that is unimpressed. Then it has a square with a circle in it and four little round blocks on it. Using sheet metal feature manager show for the base flange with all the bends for the figure 34.3 with the sheet metal with the one feature for the automatically add with the sheet metal part with the placeholder. default sheet metal setting with the material thickness, default bending allowance setting, and the auto relief the options, as well as the default inside bend radius. Your gauge table, the legacy table type, the simply Excel spreadsheet with the data for the gauge table. This can solve the other type of flat pattern calculation into what is now called the bend calculation table, which is described in more detail later in this chapter. The gauge table enables you to assign the thickness available, the inside of the main bend detail of the length limited with the score of the user for those settings of the table to each for the X factor for the separate table, then choice the list within the table that appear with the drop down list of the sheet metal with the property manager for 34.3. Show the top view line with a sample of the gauge table and sheet metal property manager when the gauge table is used. Feature manager after the bit flange is added. Sheet metal gauges, phase, bend parameters, angle dimension, bend allowances, K, auto relief, bend parameters, radius, bend order, custom bend allowance, sample gauge table of sheet metal with the gauge thickness, name, type of bend, process, material, angle, radiuses, sheet metal gauges, use gauge table, select table. If necessary, you can override the value of the U of the gauge table to give the override option of thickness of the bend radius, the X factor field of the property manager, bend allowance deduction, X factor, explain in more detail later in this chapter. On the website, sample the table of both gauge and bend tables are provided. Download material for this chapter. Bend radius, the options specify the default inside of the bend radius for all bends in this part. Override with values that identify individual bends and individual features. Thickness part thickness is gradient out with the sheet metal property manager that contains the value with a double click in any of the face model with a double click with the thickness dimension with the display with the graphic there with the thickness of the display with the blue dimension rather than a black dimension is even identified with each of the have the dimension select with the because of the sign with the link of the value menu name thickness with the red link sound with the left of the dimension value. All feature sheet metals are either the thickness value with the like of value with the link to all of the feature thickness with the makes it easily global things to check and change thickness of every feature on the entire sheet metal part to save the setting with a template where you can create the sheet metal feature for the specify with the setting to delete sheet metal failure that you can save with the file the template with a specific name of the representative settings when used. Tip: when link value with the name and the thickness of the extrusion with the dialog box allows you to show the line thickness with the option link with the depth of the extrusion from the thickness link of the value. If you save with the template where the thickness have then create with the link value with the options allowable always available to you regardless of whether you're making the sheet metal parts. Bending allowance. You can control bending allowance with the 4 option bend table, the X factor, bending allowance, bend deduction. Bend table 2 general type of the bend tables available. The text base with the Excel base with the first few rows of each of the table are shown thick of 34.5 with each of the table. I can use the X factor, bend allowance, and bend reduction. And solid bend tables can be found in the language English sheet metal bend table, the subdirectory of the Solidworks installed with the directory, although the values may not be what you need. Syntax organization or control, you may want to contact with the sheet metal fabrication shop to see what the table of equations. Note, data from the gauge table, the bending table have consolidated both legacy of the types that can be still read. K factor. The sheet metal with the form of the flat sheet with the bending of the metal causes it stretched slightly out of the part of the bend with the press slightly in the inside part of the bend somewhere with the across the thickness of the sheet with the neutral plane. There's no stretching of the compressing of the neutral plane with the various planes of the across the thickness depending on the material of the tooling process. Ratio distance inside bend surface of the neutral plane to the thickness identified by the K factor. But the other means 0.5 means halfway, 0 means inside face, 1 means outside face. Typically, you can expect the values from 0.5 to 0.3. Bending allowance, bend deduction. Bend allowance, bend deduction, and specifically length value with the ratio with the K factor with the bend allowance, especially essential for the arc length with the neutral plane with the bend region, the bend deduction length of the difference between the sharp corner of the radius corner as expressed in formula 34.6. The 3 values related with the figure 346 of the dark rectangular reps of the bend materials outside of the bend area. Really doesn't matter though. There's usually shown the U that generally accept the formula bend calculation for sheet metal. Usually ratio of T to K with the K factor published tables with asking your sheet of the metal vendor the value of the typically used values from the table that have been developed with experimental bending piece of the metal of the known length and then measuring an arc length with the inside of the bend and with the arc length with the outside of the bend. By comparing these numbers of the original linear length of the bent area, you can find the T value and the K value. With the K value, the bending allowance value can be calculated, and from BD, the bend deduction value is easy to find. Calculating the bend deduction allowance. So the bend allowance in the inner of the bend and bend allowance over the side. Specific formulas behind these number the important the intuition of the graph, the number of the means they give the release relation with the SolidWorks model with the sheet metal part with the number of the valve with the bend table, the K factor, bend allowance, bend deduction value, the typical taken with the experimental development tables. Bend calculation table. The bend calculation tables are Excel spreadsheet able to divide bend angles in the range. They'll assign flat with a refer to the developed length equation. And for each range, you can also assign an equation with a K factor. Excel tables must be set with up to link examples shown in Figure 34, 7 in several aspects. Respect declaration first sub the row that include the following item in the first column. Capitalization not important, but the column must be shown. Although the first column may be also contained in the other declaration, must have at least one shown in the bend type, the unit of the material thickness and radius. K factor bend angle, the available option for the bending type of the bending along with the bend deduction. K factor the bending calculation, value option for the unit of the inch and millimeter, meter, and centimeter. Although it looks like a plural, is allowed with such as inches abbreviations such as inches, IN, or not. Material thickness can be any variable letter. The cube of the radius can also be any variable letter. You cube of the X factor we can equation special value of the SolidWorks well equation shown sample that K is equal to 0.65 plus 0.5 asterisk LG times R divided by 2. LG of the case of assuming the logarithm I found with the DIN number 6935 standard says the formula X factor. And then the difference with the SolidWorks provided with the equation with the divided by 2 determine the K, sometimes approximated with the 0.44 times T. You should note that the X factor usually determined experimental with the designers who are not intimately familiar with the process details should work with manufacturing experts to learn ropes of the calculating sheet of the metal flat panel with the headers shown in row 8 of the Excel spreadsheet. The Figure 34 something must be spelled as shown without establishment. Equations itself will be a 9, me9 to a B11, U with the variable thickness of the radius of the parameter specified with the declaration from the top of the table, the main sheet with the on with the equation, jump with the inch with the text into the cell of the spreadsheet with the active with the Excel equation. They must be read to the SolidWorks evaluated to not Excel. I have verified that these equations for the accuracy demonstrated with the X equation, factor equation, and the K factor equation. You should verify the equations with yourself. It will help you depending on them, the production data. Variable V, even the left side of the equation represents the length of the flattened, developed, and bended area. The web help, which most of the complete source of the information available to feature of this writing referred to B is beta variable with these equations appear with the replaced with the letter B. Some of the will assume the B stand with the bend angle with the equation of the bend angle of 100 times minus 180 minus A. Use variable A with which shown with the help diagram with the linear dimension, which you must assume the angle of the root of the sheet metal must be demand. So when A is 45 and the B is 135, the corresponding bending sheet metal angle is 45 degrees, but the bend angle is 135 degrees. Figure 48.34.8 shows how these variables relate to actual geometry. Notice the tangent length of the option apply only when the bend angle is 90 degrees or lower. Less for more than 90 degrees, you must use the virtual sharp method. Always be aware that angles are measured in degrees. In design tables, you have the option to degree of the radians. Alright, auto relief. When a bend does not go all the way across the part with some sort of the feature is needed at the end of the bend of the real manufacturing part of the metal must the transition smoothly with the bend air with the flat air with the how with the SolidWorks software cannot create with a smooth transition, or it could, but it would any significant sheet metal rebuild times. For this reason, all bends of SolidWorks sheet metal must be terminate cleanly with some sort of the cut as if they called out for here the relief. SolidWorks will have 3 kinds of the relief: the rectangular tear and or oblong. 34.4H was assigning the variable geometry and bend tables. Auto relief that were formerly called bend relief. That you can simply 3 different auto relief options apply with the automatically bend with the end of the middle of the material. And these options illustrate Figure 34.9 show the rectangular tear and orb around. The rectangular and oblong types should with the control of the width of the distance path with the tangent line, then with the relief ratio selection bar with immediately below the type of the selection bar with the sheet metal property being with the ratio of the width of the relief with the divide on the part thickness of the rectangular relief. The ratio is 0.5 with the thickness of 0.5 of the inch. Means that they relieve of 25 thousandths of an inch wide, but it goes into the 25 thousandths of an inch deeper into the part beyond the tangent line with the bend. Brown relief goes slightly deeper because it is a full radius after the distance of the tangent line with the bending with the essential go the total of 1 full material thickness past the tangent line with the tear relief with the simply face-to-face shear of the material. with no gap. Alright, using a flat pattern feature of the flat, showing on the left, the flat pattern feature is added automatically at the end of the tree with a base flattening feature with the add with the feature with the flattened sheet metal part with the feature unsuppressed, flattening toolbar button axis with the tool cycle unpressed and suppressed with the flat pattern feature of the tree. Might be a little confusing, but flattening toolbar button with the flattened pattern feature in the feature manager refer to same functionality as mentioned earlier. Flat pattern feature has some couple of special functions that aren't even the same in the other features. First is that it remains on the bottom of the feature manager when the other sheet metal features are added. Second, prep with the flat pattern feature that is added when the suppressed state when the unsuppressed flattens out with the sheet metal bends. Notice all of the flattened property managers allows you to select an edge axis of the sketch with the line to denote the grain with the material. The editing the flat pattern feature you can set a view option. Flat pattern property managers shown in Figure 3410. Show flat pattern parameters, fixed face, marriage face, simply bend, select, show slit, recreate gray, flat pattern, corner option, corner treatment, gain, direction, face, extrude. Fixed face parameters determine the remain with attached over the place when the part is flattened with the generally largest face available to select with it automatically. But if you want to specify with a different face with the remaining stationary, you can do that there. When you merge face option, select with the cut with the flat pattern for the single face rather than being broken up with the tangent lines around the bends. This does a few things: selecting a face with the flattened part, clicking the converting it, either the phone, the sketch toolbar makes the outline with the entire flattened part, which is either the certain programming application that edges around with the outside of the arm broken up. Tangent ends are outside of the bend are shown. The difference between the flat pattern with the option select with the unselected are shown. Figure 3411. When bends are shown at the bottom, both examples of 3411, you turn on the simplified bends option, simplified with curved edge with the curve with the flattening, bend the straight line with the arc or spline with the option with the off, the complex edges, complex and straight, simply edges that can be cut with the standard punch if it don't require the computer. Numerical control lasers, abrasive water jets, corner treatment, the option control with the corner treatment is applied with the flat pattern of the part with the corner treatment is illustrated in 3412 with the creative with the corner of the model that has been mitered flange around the edge of the rectangular sheet. Merge face option showing on and showing off. 3412 you can create corner treatment is setting with a flat pattern property manager, corner treatment on, corner treatment off. Export with the DXF file with a flat pattern directly to the model without creating the drawing with the right click with the flat pattern feature, select with the export to DXF the DWG. Using edge flange feature, the edge flange feature is the intent of the term of the 90 degree with the default with the flange select with the tray with the direction distance specify with the default thickness of the part. The default workflow with the feature for the select with the tool select with the edge of the drag with the distance, click with the distance reference with the site, such for the vertex and the end of the flange equal the length of the type of the distance the value manually select with the multiple edge of the part with the do not necessarily need to touch one another. There's also their simple default flange, all of those several options give some of the additional methods of the angle and length and so on. Figure 3413 show the edge flange property manager as well as the simple flange. Edit flange profile. Edit flange profile. The button over the edge of flange property manager enables you to edit the sketch shape of the flange, some of the way with the rectangular, otherwise edit the shape of the flange. The note of 3413, both of the flange made with a simple flange feature for the head, and an edit you can do with this with selecting flange for which you want to edit the profile before clicking the edit flange profile button. Figure 3413 show the edge flange property manager simple flange parameters. The edit flange profile. Use the default angle of the in the inner gauge angle and face. Perpendicular face with the paper roll face, override value, face to length, vertex, normal to flange plane, parallel to flange position, trim sides and bends, offset custom bend, allowance custom relief type, and then the radiate profile sketch. Notice if you add a dimension to the sketch of the shown figure 3413, you can no longer use the arrow drag of the length of this flange. To edit the length, you must edit the sketch with the double click with the feature with the double click with the dimensions you want to change. You can edit the hole with the flange of the flange, add holes to flange profile and as nested loops. It enables you to overcreate with an additional hole with the feature with it does not enable you to control the suppression state independently from flange feature. By pulling out one of the inline with the back of the edge of the path, the edge of it to make it longer, you can make flanges only part of the way along the edge of the works, even though the edge lines appear with the black and fully defined situation where the sketch has been edited the way shown in the image of the right with the figure 3413. Using default radius option, able to override with the default insert of the bend radius to show the entire part with the feature of the bend radii with the individual bends with the end flange that has multiple flanges flange cannot be set. The only override is that the feature level. You cannot, if you need individual bends to have different bend radii, you must do this using multiple edge flange features. Gap distance is illustrated in 3414. Gap distance selection box actively only when the selected multiple edge of the main selection box. The feature of the gap refers to the space between the inside corner of the perpendicular flanges. Specify the gap distance, flange parameters, edge flange profile with the default degree and gauge, gap distance. Angle, because of the edge flange, but depending on the scale of the angle of basic base flange, if you can set the angle with the angle panel with the proper mean value with the selection of the box angle with the range value larger than 0, but value smaller than 180 of the course of each of the flange. Practical limited flange shown. 3415 limitation of the reach of the bend radius of the rectangular notch for the middle of the flange to the right with about 158 degrees. The angle effects for the flange are made with a feature for the create with the situation. The different flange with a different angle, but they must create with the separate flange features. 3415 show the establishing a limit of flange angle, then show the angle of the degrees and flange length. As mentioned earlier, if you give the flange profile, scale for the flange length with dimensions, apply with the scale of the flange length with the take with the sketch for the dimension. If the dimension is not to be added with the profile, scale for the option with the setting in property manager flange length panel with as our blind merge up to edge, up to vertex. Use them up to vertex is a nice way to link the lengths and several flanges and flange length panel with the edge flannel property manager. There are options shown the icon will start reference for how to plan length flanges measured. These icons should be self-explanatory. The outer virtual sharp, inner virtual sharp, and tangent bend. Flange position. Small icons flange position should be fairly self-explanatory. Dotted lines indicating existing end of the material from left to right. Here the name of this option material, inside material, outside bend of the virtual sharp. For you the angle of the involved, the tangent of the bend, trim side bends. The situation of the new flange created with the next of the existing flange relief that must be made with the existing flange accommodate the new flange select with the trim side of the bend with the option of the trim band. Back with the existing flange leave with the option of the unselect with the simple create with the real cut with the relief cut with the shown figure 3416 functionality record with the imagination from the use of the real sheet middle part manufactured like would be the deformed area of the corner where the bends with the going different directions overlap the overlapping bend geometry the too complex for Solidworks to create automatically, so they offer a couple of options with how you would like to visualize representation of the corner flat patterns correct with the formally model requires some of the imagination. Using the trims bends off, trims bends on. Alright, curved edge flange to be with the curved edge must be on plenty of face. For the example, the part with the toolbox on top of the mailbox, the edge of the flange cannot be put on a curve on the top of the mailbox. The flange must be made over the part of the flat end of the mailbox instead. Figure 3417 show the edge of the flange used on this part with the notice of the relief that are added on the end of the bends, although but not really needed. Note the bends relief where they are not really needed. All just like with the curved edge flange must be tangent with the 3417. Even the edge flange could have the bend extended around with the ends of the part with the knee with the create with the sharp of the edge flange with the feature of those edges because the edge flanges are made within such a way that the developed that can be flat in such a way that they don't stretch the material on the flange when the flat is compared with the form shape of the outlet. The same with the deformation between the two state with the actual forming of the flange manufacturing accuracy may be completely reliable. You may also want to examine the sweep flange feature that introduced later in the chapter as if it does some of the same things with the curved edge flange. Using a miter flange feature can create with a picture frame like miters around corners or parts are correctly recognized with the difference between miter inside of the miter outside corner with the property manager same miter flange shown in 3418. This is miter parameters use the default radius flange position trim side with gap distance stand offset with the distance 1 and distance 2 and give a custom bend allowance. A miter flange feature show that starts off with the sketch perpendicular to the sharp edge of the miter flange feature with the quickly way the chart of the sketch of the miter flange the oil is on a plane perpendicular selected edge select the edge that click on the sketch tool of the automatically create with a plane perpendicular to the edge of the nearest endpoint of the miter flange sketch of the can have single of multiple lines. They even have arcs and still. And remember that just because you can make it Solidworks doesn't mean the manufacturer can make it. Sure, the manufacturer didn't sure the part that can be made with the edge usually will, but they learn something from the experiment that when you start with the edge of the miter miter flange to remain with a consistent end of the selection. If you start selection edge of the top of the part, you should continue with the selecting edge of the top of the part. If you do not, SolidWorks will prompt you with a warning message for the tool tip at the top of the edge of the worn phrase. Starting some of the control of the miter flange for the property manager of the belt should be familiar by now. So either the default range of the flange position with the trim side, bend distance, the up distance. You have seen these controlled before. The end flange property manager start in the offset panel enables you with the pull the 5 meter flange back of the edge without using the cut. If need of the intermediate flange, you need the custom multiply miter flange feature shown in Figure 3419. And offset start offset end sketch for the miter flange. Alright, you may find similarities between the function of the miter flange feature of the sweep flange feature for the introduced later in the chapter. Alright, using a hem feature. The hem feature uses roll over the edge of the sheet material. The feature is often used to smooth over the sharp tip of the edge, shrink the edge of the beak, and use the other purpose of the capture of the pin with the hinge. SolidWorks offer the 4 different hem style with the close, open, tear, drop, and roll, which are shown in the icon with the hem property manager of the property manager hem feature shown in Figure 3420. Hem property manager and the sample hem show the edges and the direction of the edge of the hem width and the type and size. Gap distance is vertical and horizontal, outside and vertical, inside. Custom bend allowances, custom relief type. One of the limitations, keep it in mind with regard to the hem SolidWorks cannot fold over the parts for the face touch perfectly on a line. Doing this would cover the 2 sections of the part of the merge in a large piece, thereby removing the coincident for the faces. SolidWorks computers and mathematics in general do not allow handling of the number 0 very well. In reality, you can often see lights and limit light through hems. Perfectly flushed hem may not be accurate as it seems. You can edit the profile of the hem like an edge flange, control the length of the edge of the hem. To do this, the head hem, the width of the button below, edge selection box is the hem property manager shown in 3420. Alright, using jog feature for the jog feature part and puts a pair of the opposing bends of the flange at the end of the flange parallel with the bolt but the offset with the face for the jog feature for the jog property manager saying will jog are shown in Figure 3421. Jog feature created with a single sketch line with the face of the sheet metal part. Geometry for the jog should have no side bend, but this should be simple to tab like flange. Refer to the Figure 3421 line with the created jog can be drawn at the angle causing the jog to also be angled. 3 icons jog offset panel illustrate the dimension of being controlled by the setting. 3421 show the jog property manager and sample the jog fixed face. Use the default radius jog offset the direction distance 1 dimension properties fixed for the projected length jog position jog angle custom bended allowance. Alright, continuing. Fixed face, like most sheet metal feature for the jog feature bends with the spurs on the part where when it does, although it may be able to use it as obvious for the software, which should remain the station of the face. You should move it and bend the fixed face selection box enables. You select the face, and in this case, the part of the face you want to remain stationary. The rest of the face moves. The black dot on the face indicates identify with the stationary. Tip problem sometimes arises when you use the configuration change tab of the made marker of the fixed face if it can be pushed on the other face of this cover. The problem assembly with the drawings in general makes the visualization difficult. In the cases it may be advisable to select a larger face on the fewer change with the possibility to be a fixed face. Jogging offset the control of the direction of the jog by either the arrow button on the left of the end of the condition selection with the control of the jog distance select the end condition off the surface up to vertex offset the surface. Default setting is blind in which simply enter the distance from the offset with exactly the same way with the end condition control for the feature slash for the extrude. Fixed projected length. That one setting of the may be obvious for the fixed projected length with the length of the flange of the jog alternating Figure 3421. You can see what the height of the jog feature is. True to the length of the original tab of the job obviously require the more material than original fixed projected length with options select with the height maintained with the selected option finish height with the lines for the jog is added but it would be shorter because of the material that the jog additional material is not added. For comparison, the imagine to the right, Figure 3421 show the situation, jog position selection establishes the relationship between the sketch line with the first of the bend tangent of jog position icon. Have the tools of the following named from the left of the right with the bend center line with the material inside of the material outside of the bending outside jog angle. Selection enables you to change the angle of the short perpendicular section of the jog with the angle to be smooth out of the jog angles less than 90 degrees and curl back onto itself. The angle is more than 90 degrees. Angles be sure to check with the manufacturer cable capabilities. Using a sketch bend feature, sketch bend works some of the respects like a half jog required with a sketch line with a fixed face selection. You find the bend position with the same side of icons that you use the sign with the bend angle in the same way. Alright, you can use the sketch bend feature with the dog ear corners. You do the dog ear corners. You do this by drawing a link across the corner of the angle of the 180 degrees, overriding the default radius, which more than smaller one, such as 1/1000 of an inch. Unlike jog, sketch bend feature doesn't show you a preview. The sketch bend property is shown in figure 34.22. Show the sketch bend property, bend parameter, bend position, direction. You the default radius, custom bend allowance. Alright, using closed corner feature extend with the flange on this side of the meet with the other flange, typically with the corner with a big opening gap in order to create the corner with a more easily welded shut. Figure 34.23 show the part where angle flanges have been implied with the create the big gaps in the corner, although minor flanges have been embedded with the were created with the regular edge of the flanges. And this shows applying a closed corner feature. Closed corner feature faces face to match corner type. Show the open, half, and closed gap the distances, open bend region, the capillary interface, and narrow corner auto propagation. Face to extend, you must select with the thickness of the face of the one to order to extend it with selecting one face of the automatic selection with the matching face of the other flange. If they always want to extend with the corner type of the selecting icon, depict the selected face is red. 3 icons display with the tooltip with the over and underlap. Faces to match face select with the face to match selection box up to the end condition with face. The exam of the Solidworks 2013 enables you to manually select the matching face of the faces match selection box. For those times the automatic selection does not work. Alright, no, if you deselect with the face, extend with the face with the match selection box with the auto propagation option toggles only off and able to make selections manually. Gap setting enables you to specify how close you with the close of the corner. Keep in mind that they cannot use the numbers here within the field. Solidworks remind you that the plus ends are greater than equal to 0. Some large equal to is good for your knowing your limits. Overlap, underlap, the ratio of the overlap with underlap ratio of the setting with control of the far across the overlap for the overlapping feature reaches for overlap ratio of the 1 but condition is roughly ratio of the 0, but this ratio of the even is available only when you have specified overlap and underlap with the corner type. Alright, open bend region option. Effect with the finished corner looks like with the bend area with the option bend end. Select with a small group and a gap created with the end of the corner with the option with the deselected Solidworks fills the area with the geometry. Show the finished model within the options unselected with this resulting flat patterns are each setting. Open bend region on, flat pattern, open bend region off, open bend flat pattern. Alright, corner trim and breaker corner features. Coplanar options selected with any of the face of the coplanar. Select the faces with the corner trim, and the break with the corner feature. For the corner trim feature is available only when sheet metal parts are flattened. Stay with the corner trim proper manager. All allows also break with the corner option. Interface with the boil into the right into it. However, the break corner feature is available only when the sheet metal part that is folded state. Figure 34.25 show the combined interface of both of the functions include here with the Solidworks treated as if they were part of a single function. Caution the corresponding function of the 3D form shape of this corner. Believe that if you use one but it does not use the other. Or when finished with the corner trim feature of the place itself over the flat pattern feature of the feature manager, similar file with the suppressed and unsuppressed state with the flat pattern feature of the breaker corner feature with as you with its own place before the flat pattern feature with this is mine. It seems that break best use the break corner separate feature if you've done being used specifically without flat pattern in a way that the corner can be done in the folded state. Alright, breaker corner is an option permanently. You either remove sharp corners, you either chamfer or the rounded curve of the tools, you either filter edge of the thickness of the sheet metal parts, which is useful because of the edge of the otherwise difficult to select without lots of zooming. Because breaking on the corner can also break interior corners. One of the main functions of the corner trim feature is to apply bend relief geometry to the flat pattern thereby 3 available options, the circular, square, and bend ways. The options are shown in figure 34.26. Relief corner, relief type, center bend line, distance, ratio, thickness, added fillet corners. You have break corner types and chamfer radius options. Applying corner trim relief options. show these different options: circular, square, triangle. Using corner relief feature, SolidWorks have the corner relief feature for the which apply with the corner reliefs and 3D model with the blend relief for the corner trim feature for the display is only with the 2D model. You can manually select with the corners allowed with the software to select with all of them for you can fill the rectangular circle with the or bond tear with a constant with reliefs. The figure 3427 that show the relief, the preview and 3D model that carry out through the flat bar. And if you use the corner relief feature, you do not need to use the bend relief option with the corner trim feature. Corner relief with the computational extent depends on the feature for the use to evaluate whether you really need to show if this type of the feature 3D model with the 2D corner trims will be enough. Selecting option corner relief structure, creating a corner of the selecting sheet metal with the collecting all corners manually defined corners 2 bend, 3 bend corner scope. And scope corners and bends collect all corners, default corner, new corner, relief option, center on bend lines, radius, ratio, thickness of the end, tangent to bend. Mirroring and patterning, sheet metal feature for the patterns mirrored, following the same logic. Normal solid parts shown in the part with some of the features mirrored. Mirroring sheet metal feature for the nose, all of the feature for the mirror with the particular with the corner break with the sketch for the bend feature for the wood mirror. When you get the situation, individual features don't mirror. You have two options. You have the when mirroring a normal SolidWorks part, you can recreate the feature. The otherwise manually mirror the body rather than the features. Figure 3429 shows the same with the part with 3428 modeled by mirroring body with instead of just the feature geometry symmetrically. We use the technique along with the chain of the features or the asymmetrically parts when needed arise. Patterning sheet metal feature for the patterning also works with multiple sheet whatever feature for the figure 3430 show the pattern type of the hole with the end hem the controlling bend placement with the feature of the changes all of the pattern ends with the nice select especially because of the bonus of the pattern sheet metal are less demand with the general patterns and here show the sheet metal flanges and hems and patterns and edges and closed and mirrored flattened pattern. If you examine the part shown in figure 34 and 29 chapter pattern mirrored solid part 2 solid part download materials, you'll see the containment of the mirror feature of the nature of the closed corner feature for this is very reasonable pattern mirroring functionality from SolidWorks. Alright, shows forming a tool feature. SolidWorks has created two methods of applying form tool with one in the shape of the tool format, forming tool with the design label with the solid asterisk solid FTP file type generic file library area folder. Other way with a regular solid part file folder, especially intended for the forming the tool. The word forming seems to be interchangeable without discerning the difference for which they mean, or so they can assume the mean the same thing. In this chapter, I generally use the method of specify folder other than specify folder file extension. I do not see the difference between the two methods applying forming tool sheet metal part for the SolidWorks. You should know that the SolidWorks documentation refers to certain forming tool that have been in place within the part before SolidWorks 2012. You may have the lock symbol that signifying that they cannot be edited. Forming tool SolidWorks enables you to play with the feature of the arm. Form and break path with the use of feature for the straight line with bends of the rather punched and drawn the form and lance and shear the otherwise deformed material. One of the important things to understand with the forming tool that it does not shreds the material SolidWorks part in the same way that happens with the real life forming operation, the real life material thinking. Thin and film the punch and stamped and drawn. SolidWorks thickness of sheet metal part remains the same regardless of what happens for the reason you have been careful to mass property sheet metal part with the dust dressing and analysis part with the form features. Might consider taking your part over your part weight from the flat pattern rather than from this form sheet metal. SolidWorks installed the library fairly simple forming tool that can use the starting with the point with your own personal customized library. You can also examine some of the tools that you can see how they create with the particular effects you find in the library, the design library, and task pane with some of the more interesting forming tools, lances, and louvers. Notice that if you work specifying the two types of format of the solid part with the file with the required special designated folder formatting tool with the file special extension solid for FTP or forming also are called form tools. Current version SolidWorks with the Eve library feature tool is with another part, with the older version with the forming tool is essentially part with the full tool with the form and another part. One flat face, the forming tool part designed with the top of the face. By place a flash for the top face for the sheet metal part. You can move the rotating tool with the modify sketch, and you can use the dimension sketch relations to locate it. Create with the forming tool with a click of the formatting tool button on sheet metal toolbar 3431. Show the property manager interface with the tools. Form tool, property manager with a sample tool with the original orientation super type, the insertion face, stopping face, faces to remove. Or stopping face and turn the special color to do any of the face select with the face with remove the selection bar with the face to remove the meaning of the face, so will be cut with the face in the sheet with the metal of the parts. Another aspect of the forming of the tool orientation sketch, create the orientation sketch with the curve and you stop at the face. The orientation sketch cannot be manually edited with the forming tool with the footprint. Symmetrically, other features within the tool cannot tell with the sketch without direction forming tool should face. When creating a forming tool, you must remember to build generous draft and fillets with not build undercuts into the tools. Keep in mind that you have the concave fillet face on the tool. The radius becomes smaller by the thickness of the sheet metal. As a result, you must be careful of the minimum radius value of the forming the tool with the concave face of the tool has 6/100ths of an inch radius for the tool is applied with a part with a 600-inch radius thickness of the tool will cause an error because of the radius fillet, in which is not allowed. Arrows applied on the forming tool feature cannot be edited or repaired except the changing of the forming tool dimension. After the forming tool is created, special colors are used at every face of the part. For example, stopping the face light blue face with removes the red, although other faces are yellow. With the figure 3420 and 3432 show the small addition made with the feature manager, which make part and forming tool. The feature didn't exist in older versions of the tool. So the form feature tool type of the position, placement, face, rotation, angle, configuration, tool configuration, default of this part configuration, linked from the tool tool library, place tool, punch ID, flat pen, overriding document, show punch profiler center. Alright, forming tool library folder of the forming tools. The placement of the design library must be designated forming tool folder. Right click of the folder containing the forming tool selection from the forming tool folder. Check mark appear with the next to the option that is mentioned at the top of this section. Specially designated folder design library is one of the two methods used with the forming tool. The other place of the formatting tools in any library folder using SolidWorks full tool forming tool part extension. Placing a forming tool. To place the forming tool on the sheet metal part of the forming tool is allowed to be used only on the parts with sheet metal part features. You can drag with the tool with the library, drop it down on the face of the sheet metal part with the forming tool is limited to being used on the flat face. The position of the tool with the position tab of the forming tool with the feature property manager shown with the 3432 with the tab activated with the create with the move. Sketch point located with the reference point with the tool with the constant with the property manager rotate even the figure with the forming tool with the default of the forming tools create with the external reference forming tool with library full. You can also turn this off, and the property manager can also change the tool reference with another file by right-clicking on the tool with the feature manager, select with and replace from the tool. Special techniques for forming tools. One application of the forming tools asked frequently across the break and stiff and large flat sheet metal plates of the SolidWorks cosmetically cross break, which we discussed next. The cross break is clearly not something SolidWorks can use the straight bend by forming a tool can do it. You can create with this forming tool off the rectangle sketch point with the plane slightly offset of the plane and with the rectangle to create with the shape of the pyramid shape. Open the part from the material of the website with figure 34 called 34 cross break sheet metal part solid part. Examine how the part is made with the figure 34, 33. Show the cross breaking forming tool applied with the sheet metal part. Alright, cross breaks. Use the formal tool to create a cross break with the overkill. Most of the situation you need to do if you need the actual show of the indifferent geometry cross break feature is essentially a cosmetic cross break that enables you to specify the radius, angle, of the direction you to create the cross break. It doesn't actually show the part of the geometry, but also does add to the curve like with the display. And even when you play with the cross break feature, you have the option to edit the sketch profile with the create the cross. Sketch has two intersecting lines. You can add it more lines with the feature, but the fail with more than two lines. The sketch, for example, if you wanted to put with the three breaks across with a hexagonal favor, the software wouldn't allow this line, but it does have at the end of the chrome, but it does not have the edge of the edge. Any of the edge of the lines extend half of the fall short of the edge of the feature to display with the red arrow icon is still created with the break line with the sketches lines or arrow of the figure 34 show with the create cross break property part which the cross break was applied with the notice that you sleeve of the break lines through the solid much like the curve of the cosmetic threads. Cross break parameters, face, direction, angle, and radius and angle. Cross break features show that the feature managers like any of the features not like with the cosmetic thread, which only other and even the software cross break reassembles. Form a crossbend. Second special technique with a Gauss hit over the format with a Gauss hit across the bends that adapts to many of the ways shown with the going across the two bend with the cannot form with a specialty. Actually manufacture something like this I have been seeing done. Technique used here is to call a single long flat face of the forming tool, stop the face with the vertical face with the end of the fillet face with maybe select with the faces to remove the selection by fill with the outside of the forming. Tool also must be exactly match the bends of the sheet metal part with the made the edge of the part with each of the time use it unless you apply with the parts of the bend same size separated by the same distance. When you play with the tool on sheet metal part of the plate, you must play with the accurately with the side with everything working properly with the part with the same location. The cross break file is called with the chapter 34 from a cross bend sheet metal solid part of 34-35 show with the tool part which is applied. You may also want to look at the Gauss set feature introduced later in the chapter of the more conventional way to create a Gauss set geometry. Figure 35 shows forming cross bends for faces removed on both ends, face stopping face. Using loft bend features. Loft bend features enables you to create transitions between the two profiles. The range of functionality available with the loft feature available with the loft bends is limited with the two profiles. No end condition for the guide curve of both profiles or must be open when the contours are ordered to allow the sheet metal to unfold. Loft bend features isn't part of the base flange bend of the butt is a newer set of sheet metal tools available in SolidWorks. Figure 34-36 show the problem the most common application of the feature bend lines shown must be established in property manager create with the edit the feature of the bend lines are option available only with the both profiles have the same number of the straight length. For example, if one of the profiles circle instead of the rectangle with the large fillets of the bend lines options are available in the property manager. Like forming tools, you can also loft bend situation, which there is probably not intended with the figure 34-37 to show the lofting between 38 and 3D curves. They can also create a shape with the McGee flat in the SolidWorks that is gave it a couple of intermediate steps were required to get the 3D curves when involved with the surface features. 3D curves lofted bend feature created flattened complex shapes. Loft bend feature for the two methods of working shown like a 34-38 bend and form with the manufacturing method panel over those two try with the lofted bend with the bend option show with the tray with the bag press the type of the bend with the flat panel over the sheet metal part used to create the shape of the format bend with the wheel with the curve of the part 34-38 show with the part with the bend option with the left part with the formed option with the right. These part of the downloads for this chapter you don't have to use the parallel planes round and corners with the sketches both round corners making getting into model correct much easier. Loft bends and bent formed. Using unfold and fold features. Unfold features the unfold separate selected bend temporary with the typically with the conjunction fold feature of the refold of the bend combination with the apply with the feature of the must be and apply with a flat parent. For example, the whole expand across with the bend. Figure 34-39 feature manager part with the combination of apply with the well as the part is shown with the bending across with the whole of the property manager which with the same as both features. 34-39 shows the unfold fold features. Selection fixed face bends to unfold and collect all bends. Both unfold and fold features make it easy to select bends with the zooming in with the small bend with the first play within cursor combine and command activity, which allows only bends to be selected with the collect all bends option that becomes available. The features also require the select with the stationary favor to hold so that it will rest on the model move during the unfolding folding process. Using a sweep flange feature. Sweep flange features some of the miter flange, but the main difference between the swept flange is created with a new sheet metal material with the miter flange with this existing sheet metal part. Also, miter flange features add relief along the way, but the sweep flange feature will not imply that the two feature properly with a different type of the manufacturing process. Miter flange looks like a straight break pipe type operation. Sweep flange eliminates die rolling process, sampling possibility. Progressive die link like any sweep of the swept feature requires a path curve sketch, edge selection manager, selection profile sketch, drive along the path. Both selections must be open profile since the part is made for that probably roll stock, not tube. Alright, note that remember that just because you draw it, show it in 3D SolidWorks on screen doesn't mean realistic can be manufactured. Alright. 3440 show the sketch you the creative example of the property management for the swept flange feature. So the resulting feature management of the feature can be flattened with the software, but again remember how to apply with the knowledge of the limits of the material processing to know that how the possible manufacturer was it not. Swept flange is typically flattened with the way to form of the roll of the material with the link of the rain gutter with the one side of the house. Figure 3841 remains profile flattened with a path of the straightment out with making a rectangular bank flatten along the path of the option check with the profile flattened path of straightment given the blank roughly shape of the path. Real inside of the option will change the neutral plane may fail on one side or the other according to the itself of the intersection issue the flattening. If it doesn't work when it's on and try turning it off. Alright, using the Gauss-Set feature. The Gauss-Set features enables you to play with the shifting Gauss-Set on your part quickly and easily on an existing sheet metal part with the issue of the Gauss-Set feature. Select the location on the bend, the default Gauss-Set at 45 degrees, the rounded. You can curve with a flat top Gauss-Set ends to add side draft chain with the angle of the width and fill of dimension. Figure 3442. Show the sheet metal Gauss-Set property manager in two parts along with a preview of the features. Some of the sheet metal, remember the material, the constant thickness, although reality there will be some variation in thickness when you deform a part like this. You need a shape other than one provided with the Gauss-Set feature. You may have the restroke of the technique demonstrated earlier in the form of the cross bends. Alright, using tab and slot features. Tab and slot features mean with the creative the geometry. Typically, to help physically assembly with the product can be either a single part, multi-body parts. Assembly sheet metal feature can be also with the welding general parts, woodworking, joined with the other parts with the material. Let's start with the example of the single part with the form of the tab slot to give it more rigidity. First time they work within through the feature of the property manager may look at me intimidating, but in some practice, after reading the tool tips, you will become familiar with the workflow. Select the edge of the tabs will create. Select the face of the tab will extend and select the 2 points over the limits of the tab by default with the end of the first edge of the select with something more specific. Might be a good idea to sketch it out. Use the end points to sketch the limit of the tab. The offset panels refer to the width of the tab. The offset measured from and the points of the specified in the previous tab was specified enables the part patterns of the tab and just a single tab lengths enables to specify how long relation to the face is selected. But on the second tab on the tab should be, for example, the tab was welded, it should be flush with the surface, but if it is peen bent with the handle tools and crushed into play with it should be protruded out of the beyond surface of the flat panel. Nibs you specify how much bigger the slot is rather than tab for easier assembly. Creating Gauss-Set with a bend, position, edge point, offset profile, independent indent, bend, profile dimension, D1, D2, A1, fill dimensions to the sides. Indent one index thickness, side face draft, inner corner fillet, outer corner fillet, partial view, full partial view, preview, flat part invisible, override documents, full profile, show center. Or you create multiple set tabs of the slot with the new group of the feature for the start of the second set. Figure 34, 32, 43 shows a strip of chip metal formed in the box section with the rigidity with the 3 tab slots and joined together in a box. Creating joining tabs and slots, message collection, the edge, face, and point, offset, distance 1, distance 2, equal spacing, length, number of spacing, tab length, tab height, offset, inches, reverse direction, edges, types, slots, and sample part of the screen capture of the chapter 34 tab slot solid part include the download materials in this chapter. Making sheet metal parts from generic models. That we're going to cut the tape there.